It includes filming, photography, making an audio recording, providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Follow me. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is on the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphones when speaking. Have we got any substitutes today?
Yes.
And can we send our good wishes to Robert Norfolk, who is currently unwell, and for a speedy recovery? Any declarations of interest? Nobody's interested? I like that. Okay. Public participation? Well, they are not present at the time when scheduled to speak, so unfortunately we can't carry on with them. But they do have an opportunity to come to a future meeting, and I believe the issue they're interested in will be discussed at another stage. I've got Stephen Connolly and Sam Downs, directors of Bears Great Escapes Limited. I've registered to speak under public participation. The main points they wish to make relate to items 8 and 9. It says we have concerns regarding the minimum age requirements for any person assisting. They should be 18 or over. We employ 16 and 17-year-olds, and it is unfair to penalise them because of their age. It seems unreasonable that a 17-year-old can serve pints but cannot sell ice cream in the city centre. Another concern is the constant 7% increase in licensing fees, particularly given the current inflation rate of 3.6%. The hospitality industry has already been hit hard enough without another increase in licensing fees. All the income the city receives goes to pay WRS. We question what service the city receives from WRS, as our experience with them has been very poor, and it has been so for a very long time. That is what they intended to say in public participation. If it is your wish, they can be replied to in the normal way, in the normal timescales, and they will receive a written response. Thank you. We now come on to minutes of the previous meeting, held on the 16th of June. Seems like a long time ago. Is it your wish they be signed as a true record? Agreed. Thank you very much. We now come on to the first item proper on the agenda, which is a visit from West Mercia Police. Welcome to us. I'm been told that you are PC Becky O'Keefe and PC Gemma Gibbs. Is that correct? And you're here to speak to us about alcohol licensing issues in the city centre? And you've got plenty to say to us. Over to you, if you've got any comments you wish to make, and I'm sure you'll answer any questions which we have them.
Thank you very much. So, I'm PC Becky O'Keefe, my colleague PC Gemma Gibbs. So we are the PALOs, as they're now called, which is the Police and Alcohol Licensing Officers. So we are here from West Mercia Police. We cover the whole of Herefordshire and the whole of Worcestershire.
Sorry, could I just interrupt you for a moment? Thank you.
So as I was saying, myself and Gemma, we are the Police Alcohol Licensing Officers, now known as PALOs, which is a slight change on what was previously had within West Mercia. We solely now look at alcohol licensing and late night refreshments. So as PALOs, each week we are provided with a weekly snapshot from our admin and our analysts. These snapshots give us an overview of the week's incidents throughout the area we cover, which does include Worcester City Centre. So we review each incident with a view to then contacting the premise if deemed necessary for that incident. For example, if there's a report of an underage person being involved in an incident, a report of a fight, or intelligence around drugs being used in a premise, we would then, if demand allows, visit the premise with a view of highlighting this incident and suggest ways in which this incident could be prevented in the future, such as Challenge 25 and staff training, Ask for Angela, bystander awareness training, etc. On those visits, we also do look at sort of the cleanliness of the premises. We might do a drug swipe in the toilets, which is a good sort of educational tool and kind of highlights issues in certain premises. And then if there are sort of concerns, we would then sort of liaise with the safer neighbourhood teams and the response teams to ask them to pay more attention, regular visits, and then feedback any further information that might assist us. So we obviously work alongside a number of departments within West Mercia and also liaise with WRS. And then most notably, it's response and the SNT officers that feed us the information that we rely on. And they also assist us with attending a large number of licensed premises across our area. As I said in the beginning, we cover the whole of Herefordshire and the whole of Worcestershire, so it's quite a lot for Gemma and I to sort of get around. So we also have to have a look at the temporary event notices that are coming in, then also the other applications, the premise licences, varies, full applications, vary DPS. We'll obviously assess all of those applications, and then if need be, we will liaise with the applicants, or if need be, we'll obviously object to the applications if we think that there is a need there, having obviously assessed all the information. And as I said, we regularly liaise with those applicants to discuss the conditions and ensure the premises run to a high standard. As you can appreciate, there's a lot of premises within Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So our directive from the chief officers is to concentrate on the top 10 of every area. And this is a directive, as I said, from the chief officers to kind of concentrate where the demand is, basically. And currently, there are only 2 premises within Worcester City that feature in that top 10 list. Then, whilst we're obviously asked to concentrate on those areas, if demand sort of allows, then we will also do visits to other premises as well, and kind of, especially around this time of year, and if we've got kind of awareness campaigns to kind of raise awareness for, then we'll do that as well. But as I said, we are kind of directed to look at those top 10 premises.
So along with everything that Becky's already highlighted, we're also, especially around this time of year, doing a number of other operations, working alongside SNT and other departments. So one of those was back in August, I think, sometime, Worcester SNT. Sorry, can you just put your sorry, do I need to swipe? Oh, do I not need to do that? So back in August, Worcester SNT conducted some test purchasing visits. They did 17 licensed premises being off licenses, and I'm pleased to say there was only 4 premises that failed those. We then stepped in and visited those premises, obviously liaised with WRS as well, and we went in and we provided a bit of education, a bit of feedback onto what they could do in order to, better themselves, a bit of staff training and education and warning letters as well. We're also at the minute working on what's called Operation Make Safe, which is a national initiative involving hotels. We're again working alongside SNT. We're trying to get out to all the local hotels. Operation Make Safe is a countrywide initiative, and it's based around educating people who work in hotels, and that could be anyone from the cleaner to the manager, bar staff, and it's it's to educate people on child exploitation. So what signs people can look out for to prevent child exploitation taking place in their premises, and that's something really positive that we're doing, and all the premises we've been to so far have been very positive about helping out with that as well. Another one we're looking at currently is Operation WalkSafe, and that's an app that we're promoting, especially in venues that are Best Bar None accredited or El Savvy accredited, so the WalkSafe app is available to anyone, free to download, and it's aimed at those people who might feel a little bit vulnerable walking home, where they can go on their app, log in, and say that they're basically leaving the premises and that their walk's going to be a 10-minute walk and this is the route they're taking. And that app then alerts one of their contacts to say, if I don't arrive back, then check on me, make sure I'm okay. And within that app, there's a number of premises around the Worcester area that are classed as safe spaces, and they feature on the app. So we're going around asking them questions, what are their safety initiatives, and they will, and if they're happy to be featured on the app as well. So that's just something we've been doing fairly recently as well. And then Operation Christmas Presents, it's a thing that the police as a whole we do, and we go around shift briefings telling them how we can help them, how we can assist with their with making licensed premises safe, and they then go out, so the shift officers will go out and they'll do licensing checks, and they'll visit the premises late at night, and then they feed back to us as well. And I think that's about it. And you'll be glad to know one of the little statistics that we've got is over the last year there's been 312 serious violent offences in Worcester City Centre recorded, and that's a 15% reduction compared to last year as well. So a little snapshot of that for you. Okay.
Anything else? No? Thank you very much for coming to us today and providing us with that information. I will, if you're happy for me to do so, open it up to any questions. First question, as is the Chair's privilege, is from me, and it's about the cumulative impact area which we have in Worcester City at the moment, which is quite a narrow area of the city centre. I'm seeking whether you're still comfortable with that area and whether you would have at any time in the near future be looking to expand it, or ask us to look at expanding that area to see whether it's the right boundaries and whether it needs to be changed in any way. Yeah, so shortly before this meeting, we're actually sort of talking about that, and I think the sort of report sort of due kind of next year. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll get our analysts to have a look and see, obviously, the current data and see whether the area needs any changing and what's going on. So that's something that we'll definitely take away and get the analysts to have a look at. Councillor Stephen?
Thank you. I'm interested in the what happens when you find premises are serving underage adults, young people. You mentioned that sometimes happens, sometimes you find these establishments. So my question really is, what do you do with those sorts of establishments? Because really, there's the people on the front desk who are actually serving, but then of course there's a whole management behind that. And of course, they're the ones who probably have got the licence to operate the pub or the off licence. So do you just sort of give them a sort of wrap over the knuckles for the actual people who are on the serving, or does it go a bit further back to actually make it a bit more weighted so that it actually goes back to the licence holder? And is there an actual complaint actually logged in with WRS so that we can see some sort of pattern of behaviour if it is something that's a one-off or not?
Yeah, so we have a system called Innkeeper. So whenever there's an incident of any type at any licensed premise, we'll log it on Innkeeper, which again helps us kind of keep a bit of an audit trail to see whether is this a one-off, is this the first time, or is this a pattern of behaviour. And on that system as well, we can log any of our actions that we take. So generally there would be at least a warning letter we would then liaise with WRS as well. They might receive a warning letter from WRS as well. But yeah, we would deal with obviously the person that's served, you know, and potentially committed the offence there. But also, yes, we would deal with the DPS, the designated premise supervisor, and look at whether they need to go on an action plan, whether there needs to be further training, you know, what things have they got in place, why has this happened, what can we do to stop it happening in the future? Yes, definitely.
And certainly with those ones that I mentioned in August, I believe the 4 individuals that actually served were dealt with through the police system as well, separately, as in, I can't remember, yeah, whether they had a community resolution or a caution, but they were obviously dealt with for that offence, and that's on their record as well.
Yeah, I've got 3 other questioners. Councillor Scott, Reyes and Holmes in that order. Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much. Yes, and thank you for assuring us that the city centre is becoming safer, that there's less violent crime in the area. That's very good news, and thank you generally for the work you do with so few staff and keeping the city centre safe and a fun place to go out at the weekend. I think, though, that it must be a challenge. What I gather is that the licensed premises operate quite a good informal system between themselves of alerting each other that there's some problems kicking off and watch out for this. I think they have various systems, WhatsApp probably. And the question is, do they feed you into this? And when they do announce that something's going on, how quickly do you think the police can get to respond and help out?
Oh, I don't know what to press there. Is that working? So they do use WhatsApp, and they also have the CityNet radios as well. The door staff will have CityNet radios, and that obviously goes through, so everyone can hear. So all the other members that have CityNet radios, they can all hear what's going on. And certainly when SNT officers are on patrol as well in the city centre, they all also hold these CityNet radios, so they will hear, and if they're in the vicinity, then they will certainly respond as well. If not, then it will get called through to us, and in respect of how quickly we respond, it just depends massively on what else is going on as well and what the nature of the incident is. And it's all assessed on what we call Thrive, so threat, harm, risk. Help me out here. I can't remember the other, but it's all risk assessed, so it all depends what the incident is, what else is going on. So we certainly try to get out when we can.
I think as well with the CityNet radios as well, that does help immensely by kind of bypassing the need for somebody to call into the control room, and also with CCTV, they're on there as well, so they can obviously have a good sort of eye on things before you know, we might get there, so then they can communicate back with us, and again that helps with the Thrive that Gemma was talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you both for the extremely good work that you do in keeping us safe, and obviously your work is key to keeping the city one of the safest places to be in the West Midlands, and you know, a great place to live, and it's key that we've got the result of that is obviously we've got Purple Flag as well, and I'm keen to note that there's been a reduction in obviously violent crime within the city centre and a drop of 15%. However, we still do have a problem with violence against women and girls and sexual offences, which is a key area for us, and the majority of those seem to be happening in and around the city centre. So I'm really keen to work. I'm sure this committee is to work with you in terms of trying to come to the bottom of that and trying to address that, especially over the Christmas period and the amount of, obviously we know the domestic violence cases go up during this period and during this period. So if there's any help that you can give us or any suggestions you can give us of what we can do as well, that'll be greatly appreciated. So that's my concern in terms of that. Hopefully operations from your side will be ramping up during this period to make sure that we address those concerns. And the only other question is in regard enforcement for underage selling of vapes, and because I know the age has gone up. or has been for a while now, in terms of that, and obviously selling of illegal vapes with the changes of law. How are we monitoring those? Do you have a say in those, and at all? Is it straight in that? Okay.
In support of Councillor Riaz's comments, I don't know if you may want to comment about that success or otherwise of the Ask Angela campaign locally. I understand there's been some test cases recently where it's been tried, and I don't know if you can expand on that a little.
Yep, so just sort of going back to your point about the violence against women and girls, so we do now, within, they sit in our office actually, we do have dedicated what we call VORG officers, so people that will look at those, the VORG offences and things like, we have plainclothes officers that go out, I can't think of the name of them, sort of detection officers. Behaviour detection officers. So they will go out plainclothes on, you know, your Friday, Saturday nights, and especially at this time of year as well, looking out to see if they can see predatory behaviour and kind of try and prevent things before they're happening. And then, as you say, Ask for Angela, is a nationwide campaign which now, you know, is very well sort of known, and also there is the male side of it as well, that is sort of a lesser known campaign, but again, every time we go into licensed premises, we're always asking the staff about the, you know, if they're aware of the Ask for Angela campaigns, but also what we get is plainclothes officers going in and asking for Angela just to kind of reinforce that message. I think probably Ask for Angela, in our opinion, from speaking to licensed premises, isn't probably that well used. However, it is there and it is a tool for women if they are in a situation that they need help getting out of. So it is there. Premises are well aware of it, and we kind of reinforce that message every time we go to see those premises. So it is a campaign that is well known and is used.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see there's something like this Walk Safe app, but there was a predecessor that I was told about by our community safety, and I can't remember what it was called now, but there was another. Hollyguard? Yes, Hollyguard, yes. So, I mean, I don't know how well these things roll out across the country and whether they're generally adopted, but I do know that Ask Angela, you go in any place up and down the country and you'll see the Ask Angela, which is quite reassuring. But my question is about something that's probably not directly within your control, but I'd like some feedback on. Is there was one of these serious attacks was against a publican, and that pub is now closed in Worcester. And I was wondering if you get feedback on that or anything like that, and who would we address that to? Is it to yourselves, or would we take that back to the PCC, or the complaints about how long it took to respond to a call for help?
Yeah, not us.
Yes, it's not. But where would we direct it?
So I think any complaints, I think there's an online system where you can put in a complaint, and then that will go to the appropriate department, and then it will be dealt with from there.
Yeah, and so if you, with the online complaints, yeah, it will be assessed, and then they'll obviously direct it to the most appropriate department. But yeah, unfortunately, that's not something that we would comment on.
Okay, there's no other people indicating to speak, so it comes back to me to ask a couple of more questions. First of all, at what point would you consider it necessary to seek a licensing review? What kind of challenging behaviour issues would you consider relevant enough to ask for us to have a review of an establishment's licence?
So I think it massively depends on what's happened and what's happened previously as well, how that premise works with us, how they take advice. If they're not ones who take advice very well, then obviously we're going to be looking at reviews, because that's the only way to go if they're not willing to change and help themselves. So there's no sort of, there's nothing in paper, as it were, as to say when, at what point they have to go to review, but it does depend on, you know, what the nature of the incident, how many incidents before, how they've dealt with it before, how they've made improvements, if they're still listening to the advice that we're giving them. So, yeah.
No set pattern, it's just a background of events maybe, and then if that doesn't succeed, you will then...
Yeah.
Yeah. And my next question, I almost regret in advance asking it, but we have potentially a lot of issues of sex workers using establishments in the city centre. People are often treated as perpetrators rather than victims of crime, where in reality they are often victims themselves. Do you give any help, advice and support to licensed establishments about recognising these issues and how they can help support people who are maybe being forced into illegal activity?
So that's not something we would do. SNT officers, potentially, I think Operation Make Safe with the hotels, that potentially crosses over slightly. But if certainly we became aware of anything that, you know, was maybe untoward and that the premise could do with some learning from it, then we would certainly seek out some training that they could do or and pass it on.
Are there any other questions anybody may have? Can I say thank you very much for coming to us at what is no doubt a busy time of year for you. I regret not bringing you some mince pies to go away with, so my apologies for that. But I think this is the beginning of a new, beautiful relationship. So we are intending to work well and closely and in cooperation with you as the years are ahead. So I look forward to that relationship building. So thank you very much for coming along and speaking to us tonight. It's been really appreciated and very useful as well. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to agenda item 6, and I'm turning to Helen Cameron, who's going to give us a brief introduction to the report and is then open to questions.
I am indeed. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Chair. I will skip chunks of the report because it is very similar, some of it to previous years, and just highlight some of the points and then take questions. There's been no change in the service we provide to the city. It covers a wide range of things. Like most local authorities, we face a resource challenge, particularly one for finding a third principal officer who's a specialist in nuisance, which obviously I'll refer to a bit later in the report. And the other issue we've faced is the Food Standards Agency is escalating around with authorities around the country their resource issues, and we are part of their programme, which is mentioned at 3.3. And in October, when a new Food Law Code of Practice out, they advised us that we had to move to full compliance with the code, which is going to alter some of the ways we work in future. I'm happy to take questions if you want to know more details, but we are currently reviewing staff capacity to cope with that requirement and possibly some team reorganisation. This follows, of course, the first move that we made to deal with food, that we appointed 5 additional food officers in the autumn of 24. That's been very successful, and we have certainly moved the ante and are able to do things. They're now fully settled in a year on, and every one of them has been an outstanding success. And we also have, this is to replace people who've left or retired, 1 new environmental health practitioner who happens to be a Worcester City resident, starting with us in January. So things are moving on. I won't mention air quality because I know that's done under a separate port, whatever. Coming on to nuisance, which is the other big thing that we deal with. You should have on the table 2 documents which have been brought. One is called the Member's Eye, which is particularly written with regard to nuisance and what can be a statutory nuisance, not a nuisance or annoyance, but a statutory nuisance, and the conditions we have to take, and the courts, into account. I'd thoroughly recommend it as a bit of maybe bedtime reading, but certainly is worth digesting, because we do get so many people now who argue with us, including using AI to do the arguing, that this is not what the law says, but we have to stick within the law. And the second document, which is an advisory document, and it was mentioned, you know, about police giving advice, we've issued this controlling noise in pubs and clubs, which is a major issue, particularly in the summer months, outdoor events, some of it arising from COVID. This also explains what statutory nuisance is about noise, what causes it, and what premises can do to control it. It has been sent to all pubs and clubs around the county, including those in Worcester. It is a freely available document. We will update it every year, but those are just two things you might like to keep for reference with your residents. We again, as usual, experience the summer peak. The nuisance is covered right through to item 4.8, where you've got the number of service requests received. Commercial premises on that list, I think it's the 6th item down, would include pubs and clubs in there and other events from commercial premises. Happy to take questions. I know that as councillors you have an interest in barking dogs. 63 of the domestic complaints related to barking dogs in Worcester City. You'll notice that that is a considerable drop on previous years, gradually coming down. And we served 5 noise abatement notices this year. So I briefly mentioned food. I'll go back to 412. A licensing review did take place. There was a question, I think, about licensing reviews. Not only the police, but environmental health can call licensing reviews. This was the one that was well publicised in the papers, which I'm sure some of you will recall. And we've currently got 143 open cases. Right, moving back to food. Item 5.2, we completed 1,398 high-risk inspections county-wide, of 240 in Worcester between April and March 2025. And the great news for everybody is that we have a very high level of compliance in the city, 99.4%, which means they score food hygiene rating level 3 or above. So that's really good news for the city. So you've got a detail on 5.4 of the interventions we've carried out, broken down into the types of visits that we do. There's a short piece here on the food hygiene rating scheme, and I'll refer to 5.7. If you get a poor rating, we don't go back and re-rate. If you've got really major problems, we will go back on public health grounds, but if they want to be re-rated, they have to pay because of our time. We did 13 re-ratings were requested in Worcester in 24-25, but only 9 completed. That means that the other 4 never paid. If they don't pay the invoice, we don't do anything about it. But we do have a very good relationship, and always have had, with most 99% of food business operators. I thought on 5.9 you might be interested to see right up to the end of November our actual food hygiene ratings and the categories everything falls in. So there's a list there. Exempt is very small premises, confectioners, cake makers, very small retailers and wet bars. And we always have some unrated premises on the go. I've also given you the data on new and closed food premises, which you will notice is very consistent over a 3-year period. And closures have actually come down. We lost a lot after post-COVID. And currently this year, we've got 100 new registrations in the city. So I can jump again. Food sampling. Allergens, which is one of the big news articles. We still, despite the legislation now being 10 years old and updated with the labelling requirements, we still struggle with some businesses to get to full compliance. We work very closely with trading standards on this. The legislation applies both across TS and environmental health. They don't, particularly when they change suppliers, they don't update records. But fortunately, touch wood, we haven't yet had a fatality or a serious incident in Worcester. You can see then on 519 the number of service requests we've got, and in case somebody asks me, and I did have to check because your Vice Chair did query with me and it made me blink, it is actually correct. We have in 3 successive years received exactly the same number of food complaints. It's just a freaky coincidence. Yeah. We also very much involved in primary authority partnerships, which is the legal requirement. You can team up if you wish for fees that are set up under the Enterprise Act. I only mentioned this, we have big services. The particular one of interest to members here will be Aspen Services, who are based up at Whittington. They started their life, they're Worcester based, they're registered in Worcester, and they've gone over the years, 10 years this year we've celebrated with them, they've gone from 50 businesses to over 1,000, which means because of the work we do with their food safety management systems, allergens, etc., we are obviously protecting another large swathe of the public, and their main focus is on schools. So I'll let you read the other ones, because none of them... But we're maintaining the primary authority partnerships because as part of the FSA national review, they're being edged up to priority in future things that might happen in the food sector. I then run on very briefly to the health and safety. You can see the data there. It's again pretty consistent, although there have been a couple of major incidents in Worcester in recent years. And unfortunately, I think over the past couple of years, we've had 6 fatalities across the county, which is almost unprecedented in various things. And of course, last but by no means least, we are very much involved in safety advisory groups, particularly for the race course, and we've issued a new general safety certificate, many improvements made there. And there's been some advice given to the cricket ground, which doesn't require a statutory SAG. And of course, last but by no means least, we're very much involved with the SAG for the Victorian, very successful in the last few weeks, Victorian Fair. I'm now happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go through page by page, if Helen's happy with that. Anything on page 7? I heard a noise. Okay. Page 8. Page 9. Louis?
Back to page 8.
The noise nuisance complaints that you get, particularly the dog ones, how many of them just like get dropped on initial contact? Because some of the people who come through me on these matters, they seem to be very reluctant to have to progress it with yourselves directly. And of course, they're the people on the ground, literally, and, you know, to have the equipment. I just wondered, what do you know? Have you got a feel for how many sort of initial inquiries end up going nowhere because you can't get the complainant to respond with any meaningful details?
I can't say it's particular for dogs, but on nuisance inquiries, the process is that everybody is asked to provide the evidence first, because statutory nuisance is a criminal offence, and we must have evidence from the individuals involved, because it's your right to quiet and enjoyment of your home that is affected. So if people refuse to cooperate, we have to say we can do nothing. To try and encourage them, we actually send them diary sheets, which we ask them to keep possibly for a couple of weeks. That's occasionally overridden because something else comes up. If those diary sheets are returned and they show signs there is a problem, we will take it further, either by officers going out to listen, or we will install noise monitoring equipment. Now, if at any stage of that process the individual refuses to do any more, we can get ourselves into a difficult situation. If there is obviously intimidation or threats being made, then we have to carry out, as the police do, a risk assessment and decide where to take it. But, I mean, we will follow things through, but only if we have the evidence. But I can't tell you, I'd have to go back and ask how many of those 63 referred to were actually closed without any further action. But we've only served very few noise abatement notices, but most people. The problem with dogs is most people don't think their dog barks because dogs usually do it when you're not at home.
So, yeah, maybe separately I could have some information on that because I would be interested. Anecdotally, people come to me and I refer them and then nothing more is heard, so to speak.
Yes, they may not, of course, have come any further.
Maybe you can chat with Helen after the meeting at another time. Okay. Louis?
Yes, on page 9, table 4.8, we've got a helpful table of nuisance service requests. My question really is that if you look at the total at the bottom, it looks like there's been about a 30% reduction in the amount of service requests over the last 2 years. And that's quite good, and it looks fantastic. But I'm just going to challenge you a little bit by asking, well, what is the reason why it's gone down by 30%? Because it's a very significant amount. Is it because people are not reporting it, or what? Can you give us some sort of background to that?
I can try, but I'm not sure I can give you, an absolute answer. Some of the 22-23 data is still the fallout from the COVID period, when people were still having lots of events. I think some of it after is to also do with some of the changes around the work we've done with this, for example. It was 23-24, we started promoting this advice and doing more proactive work from the start of March before the season started. That may be a factor, but that can only be really with commercial premises. I don't know whether it is, people can still get through. I'm not sure whether people are choosing not to report. However, could I say that statistics can be misleading because some of our cases, although they may be less in number, are more and more complex because there are so many issues going on. We also have to deal with when neighbours fall out and then 2 of them complain to us, and we're sort of stuck pig in the middle because A doesn't like B and things like this. So you'd have to do a much more detailed analysis than I can give you here.
One of the things I did notice that when I was having a look at your website is there's lots of really good advice there about how to solve your own problem with bonfires and all sorts of things. And I'm wondering whether maybe there's been some improvement on the website, because it just surprised me when I was just looking at how good it was, because I think maybe people need to see, it needs to be publicised a bit more, because then you might even see even less people complaining if they can actually solve their own problems. So, yeah, just so well done.
Well, one of the things our duty officers are encouraged to do is to ask the individuals when they usually phone in or send an email, have you tried to speak to your neighbour? Most people, I would say, don't want to speak to their neighbour. And no, the website has not been improved in this past year because, as I mentioned at the start, we've lacked a principal officer nuisance. So, and there's been no replacement. So it's just been left as it was till whoever comes in.
Anything else on page 9? Page 10? Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if this, members, I could go out to all members, not just licensing members, please. And then back to page 9, I wondered, page 10, I wondered if businesses have to display their score on the door, because not all businesses do, and I'm sort of wary of establishments that don't. Thank you.
The answer to scores on doors of display of certificates, it is still not a legal requirement in England to display your sticker. It requires legislation, and it's not exactly a government priority. But I don't think you'd find a local authority in the country that wouldn't say it shouldn't be done. It would cause a few headaches to start with because of the checks that would have to be made. But Worcester has one of the higher levels of sticker display. And you're probably quite right to query if you don't see a sticker on display. Except where I mentioned the very low risk places that are exempt, they don't get a sticker at all. So, but no. So canvass your MP, please, everybody.
Oh, it's tempting. Councillor Holmes, I think it was, I saw.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's been a couple of incidences, admittedly we got this like high standard, of premises scoring low and then voluntarily shutting and dealing with their issue and reopening. Are they considered, are they reassessed when you go, or is it like an MOT, you get a sort of like, while you are being dealt with, it's one case? And yeah, it's just, I assume that's, I'm quite curious as to what would cause it. It's a difficult conversation and then the premises does decide to voluntarily shut and address their issues.
Yeah, we have two. These are all standards set by the Food Standards Agency under the Food Law Code of Practice, which is a public available document you can find online. We have powers to either formally close a premise for very specific offences. It's usually like very, very dirty, mice, rats, lack of hot water. So you've probably found one of those where they've voluntarily closed. However, because of the problems with the courts and getting, if you close a premise formally, you have to go to court to get it ratified by magistrates within a very short period of time. And you still have to virtually produce a whole case file of evidence. Most local authorities, because of resource issues, feel it's been better to officer to voluntary close, but they'll have to get my approval to do it, basically. We don't get very many, there'll be similar reasons. They will still get their low score, it makes no difference. 90% of our inspections are unannounced, so it's what you see on the day. The score is given on what you see on the day. Where it's a very poor premise and it's voluntary close, we're back next day to see what they're doing. And there is a document given to them that they cannot reopen until we agree. So, and then they will be subject to regular monitoring and they can pay for a re-rating at some point. And again, as the food lead officer, I have the power under the FHRS brand standard to delay a visit from 2 weeks up to 3 months so they can demonstrate that they've improved. Fortunately, we don't have many. Go to places like Birmingham and they're swamped with these poor premises. I think they did 38 formal closures in October. So we're very lucky, yeah.
Okay, anything else on page 10? Page 11? Page 11?
Given that I know that you say that they're exempt, but and it's the food health FHRS that's done. I'm curious as to why wet bars, I assume, are bars that don't sell food, and what a small retailer would be considered to be. But cake makers, because there is a potential for a food issue with cake making. So I do wonder if, you know, why it's excluded and whether you think that should perhaps be included in future.
You've hit a very difficult can of worms here, to be honest. It's again something much discussed with food colleagues. The FHRS brand standard is set by the Food Standards Agency and has not been reviewed for a number of years, so it's now out of kilter with the type of food registrations. And the issue is that they're still subject to standard inspection or alternative contact like questionnaires or remote, but they have to be visited at some stage. The problem is that if you give a wet bar a rating, the way the coding scheme is done, they will nearly always get a level 5. Now, if you think about somebody on the high street producing fancy meals and, you know, all the other things you have to do in a kitchen, a lot of people think it's unfair that they should all be in the level 5 category. It also has to be said that we're gradually bringing more in because online trading has changed this, because the online providers will not accept somebody who isn't got a rating. So it's moving. The part issue here is that because of shortage of resources, some of these very low risk premises, because the risk assessment's been done, haven't been visited for a period. And at WRS, we think at the moment, until we've actually been to see them, we shouldn't score them. So you'll find that figure coming down gradually. But the brand standard's clear about who we can exempt. But it is inconsistent.
Anything else on page 11? Page 12? 13? and 14. There being no further questions, thank you, Helen.
Thank you all.
It has been wonderful, as always. Do members want to follow up the advice of Helen Cameron to write to our Member of Parliament regarding the scores on the doors policy? Sorry? Yes, I believe so. I can certainly write on your behalf if you wish. Yeah. Thank you very much. We will do that. You've persuaded us, Callum. Thank you, Helen. It's been much appreciated. Thank you for your work.
Will you excuse me?
I will, yes.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
And to you. We're now moving on to agenda item 7. I think this is Kieran and Mark, isn't it? Kieran, over to you. Was it first or was it Mark first?
No, it's me, Chair. And thank you very much, everybody, for the opportunity to talk to you about dogs. I'll start in the section of the report up to 3.9. WRS provides the stray dog service on your behalf. As you'd expect, that's a collection of dogs that are seen to be straying across the city. And I know a lot of people are interested in what happens to those dogs. So the majority of those are reunited with their owners, subject to appropriate fees being paid. And later on in the meeting, we'll be obviously covering fees. And that's about half of those of the stray dogs get returned to their owners. 41% get rehomed because the owner hasn't come forward, or if they've come forward, they're unable to pay the relevant fees. And there's a very small number that might get put to sleep. Certainly, it is a small number. This year, up to the 1st of December, it was only 8 dogs. 3 of those because they were banned breeds, and 5 because the behaviour of those animals was not suitable for them to be rehomed. As I'm sure you can appreciate, acting on your behalf, we don't want to rehome a dog that shouldn't be rehomed. Less than half of the dogs that we receive as strays are microchipped or have those microchip details up to date. It is a legal requirement to maintain those. Certainly, we try to encourage owners to microchip their dogs, and when we hand those dogs back to their owners, then we are in discussions with them about that. You will note from the report there has also been an increase in the welfare state of the it's not increase, a decrease in the welfare of the dogs that we're picking up as strays, and that there are more welfare issues. That leads to increased vet costs. I'm sure somebody's going to want to know why. We suspect that's due to the cost of living crisis and that people aren't able to cover the vet fees and the ongoing living costs of their dogs. And to kind of counteract that and the number of dogs we've got, because the level of stray dogs in the city is still remaining high, is that we are trying to improve the support we're providing to dog owners through our messaging when we interact with them through the stray dog service, or through other media such as our website and social media posts. And we've had a number of microchipping events across the southern section of the county. One of those was in Worcester earlier at the end of last month, and it was very well received. We had a good number of dog owners coming up and engaging with our dog wardens. That's it from me, Kieran, if you're able to take over.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so animal licensing. In 2018, the way licensing officers started to inspect animal licensing premises changed due to the introduction of the Animal Welfare Licensing of Activities Involving Animals Regulations 2018. The regulations brought in new categories that inspectors had to go out to inspect premises under, and they were very much more comprehensive and prescriptive than they've actually ever been in the history of doing any animal licensing inspections. These categories included selling animals as pets, so this wasn't just through pet shops, this included things like selling dogs from your own home, providing for or arranging for the provision of boarding for cats and dogs, but that also includes kennelling, catteries, home boarding and daycare for dogs as well. It also includes the hiring out of horses, which includes riding schools, dog breeding and keeping or training of animals for exhibition. Some of the main differences in this legislation which officers had to be aware of was that a licence can actually now be authorised for more than one activity. So if you're a business and you are doing animal boarding and dog breeding, you don't actually have to have two separate licences. You can actually have one licence now that covers the whole business, which is less onerous for the actual business and less onerous for the inspector as well, because they only actually now need to go and inspect once. Licences are now assessed through a star rating, so they can be issued for a 1, 2 or 3 year licence. They also introduced a business test. In WRS we get lots of inquiries and complaints regarding breeders, but actually the business test helps us as inspectors know whether actually the premise needs a licence or not. So the business test is that you need to be breeding 3 litters in a 12-month period. So when we actually get complaints, that is something that we actually look at to see and investigate whether that actual breeder has been breeding 3 litters in a 12-month period. If they're not, we don't just put that complaint to bed. We actually pass that on to the intelligence team, who then monitors social media platforms and other complaints that come in to ensure that actually that complaint is actually not closed until we're satisfied that we've done all we can. Inspections of premises are also now, inspectors are also now able to vary, suspend and revoke licences, which inspectors haven't been able to do before. So if the inspectors have gone out, done an inspection, but it's not quite right, officers can actually suspend that licence and make a recommendation to that business to make changes in a 28-day period. And within that 28-day period, officers would engage with the business to ensure that all those recommendations are being carried out and then go out and re-inspect. If those recommendations haven't been implemented, a licensing officer can actually revoke that licence, or if only half of those recommendations have been taken on board, they can vary the licence. In Worcester City, currently there are 16 licences held by businesses in Worcester. The table at 4.5 outlines which ones those are. They've slowly increased but actually stayed quite consistent since the introduction of the regulations. In terms of proactively monitoring, officers started a project 12 months ago where they carried out inspections on both 3-star and on both 2-year and 3-year period, 2-star and 3-star premises. Compliance in Worcester is actually really high. There were no businesses that officers went to where they had to suspend or revoke a licence. So compliance in the actual Worcester businesses has remained quite high. As I've already said, if anything comes into the team, the intelligence team looks at it and monitors it first. Officers don't go out straight away. If there is a complaint, we will monitor it first and then make a decision whether we go out and do any enforcement activity. One of the things, and I've outlined there in 4.7, is post-COVID there was quite a high level of illegal puppy breeding across the country, not just in Worcestershire alone. And we conducted an operation which we've brought to this committee previously and outlined the work that we did. We then did a follow-up operation, and some of those files are still going through currently. So there were a number of businesses that were warned through a warning letter, and there were a number of businesses where cautions were given, and there were a number of businesses that we are still progressing through the enforcement file process. I'm not going to talk about 5.1 onwards because I think Helen's probably already done that. We wanted to make sure that we put community environmental health in here and dog barking cases just for completeness. But if anybody has any questions, I'm sure me and Mark will be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kieran. The first question from me, and I'm speaking from experience here, and I think you've already hinted at it, and I think in what you mentioned about enforcement, I simply refuse to believe that there are only 4 establishments in Worcester providing daycare for dogs. I know for a fact there's a lot more than that. I simply refuse to believe that there are only 4 people breeding dogs in Worcester. Now, you've hinted about what you do and you've been doing some operational work, but proactive enforcement, I wonder if you can give us a bit more information about how we can actually ensure compliance, not with established licensed premises, but premises or individuals who continue to flout the law by being unlicensed, and what we can do to actually, one, raise the profile of the legislation, because I think in some cases the issue may be ignorance of the law, that they are doing it despite not knowing that they need to require a licence, and 2, that if they are aware of the law and are ignoring it, what can we do to actually ensure that they do submit an application for a licence and be judged in the normal way?
That's okay. Currently, there are 3 complaints that we are dealing with in Worcester City that are with the intelligence team, and they are keeping a watching brief of those 3 businesses. It's very difficult because of new guidance that came in called the communications data, which was about 6-7 months ago, which makes it really difficult now for us to monitor social platforms and get information from those platforms. We need to show that we are actually going to do something with that information once we've received it. Hence, there's a lot of information and intelligence building that we have to do with any complaint that we get. So that's what we do. For the complaints that come in, they go to the intelligence team, and then if officers need to act on those, we can do. Some of these are home borders, and we'd actually have to get a warrant to go to a private house to actually, we can't just knock on a door and say, excuse me, are you breeding, or have you got this business? We actually would have to get a warrant, so we need the evidence to show that actually that is happening at that address. In terms of proactive work, we have a communications officer in WRS now who's working very closely with the comms team at Worcester City, and they are building up a series of comms, which includes Mark's team as well, to send out, and which shows responsible, not only responsible dog ownership, but the things that you've outlined there in terms of what to look out for when you're actually purchasing an animal, but also if you actually see anybody who's doing this, to actually just let WRS know.
Okay. I think there's a potential need for a significant marketing campaign to alert not only the public, but to potential people who are in breach of the legislation. People asked me the question the other day, what's the problem if the dog's safe? Well, if there's not a licence, it's not insured. It's as simple as that. So your dog could be at risk if it's going into daycare. Adam, you're next.
Thank you. A very specific point, first of all, on dog control. I perhaps should have asked this with Helen there. So a neighbour comes and says, or a neighbour knows that there's a noisy dog and getting offended by that on a frequent basis. But a dog isn't like a noisy machine in a factory. It can be turned on and off, depending on how well the dog's looked after. So I think it's quite a hard thing to enforce, which is why the number of actual actions is low. Is there a way, and you may, I hope you already do this, for a soft warning to be given by WRS to the owner of that dog that's been reported for being noisy, to say, we've had an alert that your dog's too noisy, can you take some action on it before steaming in with enforcement action? That's the first point.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as soon as we receive a complaint, before we've undertaken any validation of that, we will notify the individual being complained about so they are aware that the complaint has been made so they can take appropriate steps. And then during the course of the investigation, we would always try to engage with the dog owners to try and bring about any resolution or improvement in their animal's behaviour. And as part of that, we offer the services of our dog wardens, who may be able to offer advice and training to assist them in working with their dog to do that. Because
is that anonymous? Where the source of the complaints come from, is that anonymised?
it is at that stage, yes.
Okay, thank you. My second point is dogs, really. A couple of general points about dogs. The points made in the report, and I think we all know it, that there's way more dogs in our cities than there used to be, and they can cause problems, both not only noise but strays, and generally some of the dogs aren't, to be candid, aren't very well looked after, and it's not fair on the dogs and how they're looked after. People have started to look after dogs, or not own dogs, when not necessarily looking after them properly. Your reports dealt with the licensing and the controls of microchipping. It's dealt with the enforcement of nuisance, and it's dealt with what happens when there's strays, which is probably the main extent of what WRS deals with. But what I wonder is whether, and I think it's just more than just an environmental health and licensing thing, but whether we, as a council, and with the support of WRS, should be doing more to work with other agencies like the RSPCA and the Kennel Club to give clearer advice and about how dogs should be looked after and what sort of dogs are appropriate. And I don't think they get that. Everyone's been rushing to buy dogs, and certainly talking to vets and the sort of dogs which they get to look after, they're very much dismayed about the poor state, not of dogs, but of dog ownership. And I think I could quote several sources on that, and I think it's wonder if we think, as a council, we should be doing more on that. Is there anything that you two might think about that?
I was just going to say, in WS, we recognise that the dog issues are a big problem, whether it's stray dogs, dog breeding and licensing, or dog barking complaints. We've identified that, and we've got a priority within our service area to try and tackle that holistically across all our teams, which is why Kieran, myself, and David Mellors have been working together on how we can tackle those. So the supporting messages and information has been going out to those looking to buy a dog, those looking to as Kieran said, put their dog into somebody else's care, or if there are issues relating to somebody else's dog. Those messages have been going out with all our interactions. We've been working with a number of organisations, including Trade Standards, around illegal puppy importation, for example, to try and spread that message further. And our dog wardens have been going out to different community groups to provide advice and assistance where they have welcomed that to help with that overall message. But yes, it has, since COVID period, there's a significant number of more dogs in our communities, and a lot of those were not socialised effectively, and there's been an increasing number of problems. So we've been trying to roll out that message as a service, and doing it, yes, in the city, but also around your boundaries, because there's a number of housing estates where the dogs from theirs will be found in the city, and vice versa. So we're trying to be doing consistently across the south of Worcestershire.
Chair, I think Mark is far more diplomatic than me. I think first and foremost our role is statutory, and that's the service that WRS undertake. Within that, I think Mark and Kieran and Helen, when she was here, talked about the general array of advice that we provide in and through that statutory work. But you'd expect me to say this, Chair, you know, we don't have an endless amount of resource to step into other agencies' shoes. So whether it's vets, whether it's charitable associations or charitable organisations, there's already a lot of advice given around dog and dog care. So I would be reluctant for us to do anything more on that. What we can do, obviously, is signpost and use the literature material that's already out there as part of our own media.
Thank you very much, Chair. I note that there was, I think it was at Worcester Woods, the microchipping event. I'd love to request one in Gallivant Park, please, which is very popular with dogs. Thank you. I did email earlier on in the year. Thank you. And the second point I had was around dog breeding. So I note that you said 3 litters in 1 year. I'm hoping that's not from the same dog. I note that the Kennel Club will only register pedigree dogs if the bitch has 1 litter per year. I was wondering if a dog is being bred more than once a year, the detrimental impact on the dog, and if that was noted, or if there was anything you could do on that, please. Thank you.
No, it's the breeding of, it's the selling and breeding of three litters in 1 year. So not from just one dog. So it's collectively. Any new dog breeder, we always take a vet with us. The legislation is quite clear that any new dog breeder, there needs to be a vet that comes along. If officers ever do an inspection and they feel that something's not quite right, they will always get a vet's second opinion as well. So the officers are quite thorough. If they ever feel like there's any welfare issues or nothing's quite right, they will always get a second opinion.
That includes unannounced visits, I assume.
Yes.
Councillor Stephen?
Mark Cox earlier on said there was a fee for getting your dog back. I'm just wondering how much that is, and also whether that's a fee which could be better publicised, so that if people realise they had to pay whatever the fee is to get your dog back, people might be a bit more careful about letting the dog go stray in the first place. There was a question about whether we should publicise that a bit more.
If I may, Chair. So the fees are on page 50. They're also on the WS website, and any dog owner who's trying to claim their dog knows about those fees and charges. So we do try to publicise that. It depends. So there's a statutory fine of £25, which is a non-negotiable. That's levied by government. And then there is a kennelling fee, an admin fee. If it was out of hours, there's an additional fee. So there, and if the dog has strayed before, there's a repeater's fee. So depending on the circumstance of the dog, it can stack up.
So it could be hundreds of pounds, perhaps?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering whether that should be publicised a bit more, because people might be a bit more careful.
I think you're doing that publicising now. Yeah. Say it again. It's someone's listening, honest. Yes. Yeah, but I think you're right. It's about marketing. A lot of this issue is about marketing and making sure the message which we want to make clear and obvious about animal welfare, essentially what we're talking about, is understood out there. And I'm pleased to hear what we're hearing from our officers, that there is a comms team and a marketing exercise being used here, and I think that's something we'd like to see more of. Councillor Holmes, you're the final speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that subject of fees to return your dog, is there a mechanism with the microchipping as to whether the dog's been microchipped and the records are accurate, or is it just they're contacted quicker and therefore they're kennelled for a shorter period of time, therefore your bill's likely to be lower?
And you can assume that the microchip is working and it isn't. Yeah.
If I may, Chair. I forgot to mention one of the fees was if your details aren't up to date or your dog's not microchipped, there is a fee for that. And it does. If your dog's been microchipped, most people, when they find a stray dog, take it to a vet's because they're convenient, they're around in your neighbourhood. So, and then the vet will reunite the dog to their owner if their owner is contactable. Unfortunately, even if there is a chip, it hasn't been registered, all the details are out of date, as I indicated previously. So we're not the vets aren't able to reunite you, and so the dog warden has to collect the dog. So yes, to answer your question, if the details are up to date and it's microchipped, then it gets reunited quicker. I would also add it's a legal requirement to have a collar and tag with the contact details of the owner on it as well. And so that, for any layperson, can read a phone number on a disc on a collar, and therefore just ring the dog's owner and get it back very quickly without any fees or charges.
I don't see any other members indicating to speak. There's a recommendation in front of you under 1.1. I'm assuming everyone's happy with that? Thank you very much, and thank you, Mark, for coming today. We're now moving on to agenda item 8, street trade and policy review, and I think this is Niall.
Thank you, Chair, members. Yes, so page 21. This is the Street Trading Policy Review 2025. I'm sure you're all aware that one of the functions of the licensing service is street trading, and this committee is responsible for any policies that are put in place in the licensing service. So street trading, certainly licenses, were introduced in Worcester back in 2003, and since that time there have only been really minor changes to the policy. This means that some of the areas were out of date, and there were some obvious gaps that needed filling. So we've taken the opportunity to update the policy rather than replace, and have attached it to this report at Appendix 1. So all of the updates that have been added to the policy, just to assist your members, are in red and listed in the report. So some of the major changes are certainly an update on the definition of street trading. It's always confusing. People aren't quite sure when a licence is needed and when it isn't. So hopefully the policy makes it much clearer. The introduction of a seasonal licence, which certainly at a request of one of the members. Revised application process and assessment criteria. This is really in relation to shorter term licences, so that they're not having to go through the whole process of months and months of waiting for a licence when it's only for one day, for example. Suitability tests for licence holders and employees. Now, this is something that we're looking at, and again, whether it's appropriate to put it in. We didn't have a suitability test before. The council does have a safeguarding responsibility, and certainly for any licences that it issues or grants. So that has been introduced, and again is open for comment when the time is right. Clear enforcement provisions and some updated licensing conditions. So what we propose to do is undertake a 6-week consultation on that draft policy with all of the people highlighted in and organisations highlighted in the report. Fire service, it's the ones that we would normally consult with, sort of fire service, police, economic development teams back at the council, so a broad range of people, and also open it up to licence holders, members of the public. And it's important to consult with businesses in the city, because there is sometimes a direct conflict with street trading and the existing businesses, so they will certainly have their say. We'll liaise directly with the bid to try and get sort of contact directly with those businesses, and then any comments on or suggestions will be assessed and then brought back to this committee at a later meeting sometime next year. That's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, or clarify any points if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as I can see, there's quite a few changes which have been included here, but there's 3 substantial ones which I think maybe we have consideration. The suitability test, which I think is long overdue and should be in there to make sure the person is a fit and proper person, and with a national insurance number and everything which goes with it. The seasonal licence and the 100-metre rule, which we haven't touched on, but I think that's a very important change which we're talking about. The potential public consultation which we had tonight talked about traders having employees under the age of 18. My understanding from reading the report is that was all the existing policy anyway. So if he's already has people under the age of 18, he'd be in breach of that policy. Would I be correct?
Yes, but again, it's open for comment. Licence holders need to be 18 or above. Now, if we want to open it up to people who are younger than 18. I mean, as we say, the idea of policies are for business to make sure that, you know, it can run smoothly, but there's also a safeguarding element. If we feel it appropriate that 16-year-olds are left on stalls in and around the city, then it's open for comment, but it's for this committee to consider that and make the determination.
So we would be inviting anybody who has concerns about that to actually participate in the consultation exercise and
Most definitely, Chair.
come back to us to make a consideration. Are there any comments, Councillor Scott?
Thanks. I'm pleased that this is, the changes sound really good. I'm glad it's going out to consultation. The public speaker didn't turn up, but the chair read out what he was saying. And I think I'm quite sympathetic to the notion that while I think it's absolutely right to check for suitability of the applicant, I'm just querying that point about the assistants must all be 18. I can't see that that's necessary when it's a perfect job, and my own children have done it, to help with a fast food, a stand, a mobile trader, doing a couple of hours flogging bacon butties or on a market stall or even ice creams. And I can't see why 18 is that minimum age when you're allowed to work at a much younger age, and as I think he said, would have said if he'd come, you could serve in a pub. And I don't think if you're working in a pub, the assistants, the bar staff need to get approval either, do they? The licensee does, but the assistants do as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're going a little bit off topic, but it's relevant. So, yeah, certainly within a pub, every sale made by under the age of 18 has to be authorised by somebody over the age of 18. Totally different street trading. I appreciate that food sales is different to alcohol, so there are different safeguards in place. But again, this is all open during the consultation. If you feel that that is, you know, it's an arbitrary age and it's too much, then put forward those views and it can be considered by this committee.
I'm not saying I've got a strong view either way, but I've also got to illustrate the point that we're talking about people being lone traders here, potentially on their own and being vulnerable under the age of 18. That does give me some nervousness, but I understand also the issue which you raise about making sure that we're open for business and not holding people back. So there's got to be a balance, and I think child labour laws and other issues have to be taken into account. But that's part of the consultation exercise, and we'll get that feedback, and if it becomes an issue, we'll have a look at it when it comes back to committee. Do you want to come back, or Councillor Holmes?
On 8.4, we've got proof of identity and in brackets, copy of a passport or UK driving licence. So that kind of infers that you want photo ID, but those are quite expensive items for particularly younger people, and not everybody may have a driving licence. They might be unable to drive, or then they may not have a passport because that's quite expensive. So what other forms of licence or ID would be accepted? Perhaps the registration that we have for voting, would that sort of thing be accepted?
Yes, it's something that possibly hasn't been considered, but they need to be able to prove their right to work in the UK. Obviously, as a local authority, we need to ensure that all licence holders have the right to work in the UK before we issue a licence, as do their employees or assistants. So, yeah, we'll certainly look at it.
My question is about ice cream vendors. And what I'm wondering about is sometimes I think we might be guilty of having policies which are in one area and then we have policies in another area and they don't necessarily all join up. So one of the things I think we're all quite conscious of is the importance of air quality and improving air quality, particularly for children on the street. And obviously sometimes you get older vehicles which you have to have the engine running to be able to have the compressor running to keep the ice cream cold. So forgive me if this is already covered in this policy, but is there some requirement in there about the age of the vehicle or the ability to run the vehicle in a way where you're not producing fumes in the street?
This is something which I've been very hot on about and asked about many times. There is an answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've discussed at length about how far should the policy go? Should it be a restricted trade practice as far as stopping vehicles such as ice cream vans and diesel and petrol? The difficulty you have is those types of vehicles are very, very expensive. So if it's something that needed to be introduced, which I'm not sure it can under condition, you would probably be restricting or getting rid of all of your current ice cream or existing vendors. I'm still looking at this because I'm trying to get a definitive answer as to whether it can be conditioned or whether it can't be conditioned. The impression I'm getting at the moment, certainly the advice that I've had, is that it can't, and you shouldn't be looking at it in your conditions when it comes to petrol or diesel vehicles. That's what we're talking about, isn't it? We're talking about petrol or diesel vehicles operating within the area. Lots of other councils have achieved a ban, so you'll hear that, lots of the London boroughs have achieved a ban on petrol and diesel vehicles because they've introduced clean air zones. So those vehicles can no longer operate in that area. So they've sort of gravitated towards the sort of electric and sort of pedal power. But of course, I've looked into this, and electric ice cream vans are somewhere in the £150,000. So it really is. It's that sort of, those are the fees that we're talking about. So again, it's something I will be looking at whilst the consultation is taking place. But at this stage, it's a difficult one to introduce.
Okay, so it definitely will be in the consultation then, will it?
Not the consultation,
okay, but surely
something that can be raised and something that I'll be looking at.
We took it out of the consultation process because there's some legal uncertainty. What I can give you an assurance about is if it gives us if we have the opportunity at some time in the future and legal clarity is gained, it's something which we can come back to. At the moment, I'm not confident from the advice which I've been given that any decision to move to an age rule on ice cream vans could be legally enforceable, and we could be in breach of some regulation and laws if we try to. I would love that to change, because I want to do what you're suggesting. I want to have that age rule on ice cream vehicles. We have some very dirty things polluting our city at the moment and dressed up as a food premise. They're not. They're dirty and horrible, and they need to go. But how we can actually achieve that is a different matter, and that's what we've asked our officers to look at. And if we can come back with a solution to achieve that, we'll do so in the weeks, months, years ahead. And I've been looking at it for at least 4 years already. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Cooper. I did write you down, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. In light of local government reorganisation, I was wondering if any of the other Southern Worcestershire district councils had adopted a similar procedure. Thank you.
I'm aware that it has been looked at in one or two of the other districts, but it's not sort of a catch-all. So we're probably, when it comes to the development of this policy, we're probably at the forefront, is it? Yeah, I think their policies were not as stringent and not as detailed.
The recommendation is in front of you, asking for this to go to consultation and to come back to committee. Are we happy with that? Thank you very much. We now come to the licensing environmental fees and changes for next year, agenda item 9. Who's leading me on this? Kieran, over to you.
Thank you. Every year we do an exercise on looking at fees and charges for licensing environmental health. That exercise has taken place. It's an exercise that takes place with myself, Lloyd and the finance team, where we look at how many licences have been issued over the past 12 months and how much has cost both Worcester City and WRS officers to process and do all the legal bits and democratic processes around those licences. After we do that exercise, we look at whether there's been a profit or a loss, and we look at what that percentage increase can be, if any, for 26, 27. So that exercise has taken place, and the recommendation is that fees and charges will be increased by 3% across all services. So that includes licensing, food, health and safety, pollution control and technical services. That is in Appendix 1. Is it Appendix 1? It is Appendix 1. Yeah, it is very difficult to read. Members should note that there are some fees that are statutory and 3% can't apply. These include alcohol, entertainment, so anything in the Licensing Act, some Gambling Act fees, and there's another one now, which one have I forgotten? No, there is another one. I can't remember which one. Alcohol gambling, that's it. Taxi fees must remain broadly cost neutral, and by applying the 3%, they are. The fee for a Hackney carriage vehicle licence currently includes a £25 charge. This is the fee that's extracted to go towards the unmet demand survey, which is due next year. There is also a electric fee waiver, which was agreed in 2023, which we are recommended that it continues for another year. There was a fee set aside for that fee waiver. Just over half of that budget has now been used. Therefore, that we're recommending that for the next year onwards that we only allow the fee waiver for new vehicles. Up to date, the vehicles that have used it so far have all been the same licence holders, so they've taken the opportunity for the last there's 6 licence holders that have taken it up so far. However, we are going to do some work with the comms team to try and promote this to new drivers going forward, but we feel that actually we need to offer this up to new people that haven't used it already. That's it. Happy to take any questions.
Just to clarify then, that those 6 current licence holders would now have a full licence fee charge?
For 26, 27.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions, really following on from that point exactly, looking at the electric vehicle licensing. It says under section, I think 4.2 of the report, that you anticipate that the number of vehicles could actually increase. Given that the number is so low at the moment and seems to have increased so slowly, do we have any indicators to say that it would be likely to increase? I just wanted to sort of put on the record really the thought or the feeling. Obviously, it's important to us not to punish people who are doing a thing that we want them to be doing, although I can understand the logic of not necessarily wanting to give a handout of taxpayer cash to a group, to drivers who have a vehicle anyway. And I can understand incentivising, wanting people to get new electric vehicles, and that part does make sense to me. But I was just curious really as to the revenue balance of that as well, if you could expand on that a little. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. The intention was that we would get more people actually taking this up. At the moment, that hasn't come to fruition. There's a number of things that we've got that we'd like to do to encourage that. And by doing that, what we can't do is therefore still have the people that have already had the licence continue with it. If there's an idea that actually we will get more people taking it up going forward. But that is based on the fact that we only put a certain budget aside. However, it does also say in the report that we will formally take another formal review in 2027.
Councillor Sarah, Councillor Keegan, Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So I think we're all a little bit of difficulty with this prospect of essentially applying licence fees now where they didn't used to be for people with electric vehicles. So at 2.8, can I ask, do we know how much it would cost to not make a change here and to let it continue as it stands?
So we would need to sort of go away and identify what that cost is. We've got about £5,000 left in the reserve. And as Kieran has said, the intention with the introduction of this subsidy, for want of a better word, was always to incentivise people to move from diesel or petrol onto electric. So what we've had is some success. 4, 5, 6? Six vehicles have converted, which is great, but not a huge number. And what we want to do is to return to the original essence of why the reserve was set aside, to see if we can convert more people to convert from diesel and petrol to electric. So with that amount of reserve that's left, how many vehicles will that allow us to potentially support this year?
For 26, 27? Yes. All of them, but that would be it.
So we could support another 5 or 6 vehicles, new vehicles, having a 1-year subsidy of their licence if they converted. So if we were to continue with the existing vehicles, that would again be in the region of 5-6K probably. There is no budget for that, and there is no reserve that we can tap into. So officer advice would be that we don't create the revenue pressure.
That just seems to me we're sending a very poor message, and I'm not sure, I don't feel it's worth spending, not spending that money. That's how I would think about it.
Can I just say, I think we have to have a 28-day consultation exercise on this decision, do we not? On the fees and charges for Hackney carriages?
It's not a consultation as such. There is a legal requirement for you to advertise your operator fees and vehicle fees. And in there are the electric vehicle fees and charges, but they are 0 at the moment. So when we advertise them, it's just going to be for new vehicles only. That was the intention. But of course, this is the discussion that we're having. One thing worth of note, whether it's relevant or not, is that we haven't seen an uptake of any wheelchair accessible Hackney carriage vehicles. So they have all been the old saloon type vehicles. So it's just replacement of those types of vehicles, whether it's private hire or Hackney carriages, for those vehicle owners who have got the grandfather rights. So again, it's intention to try and increase electric vehicles on the fleet, and our goal is wheelchair accessible vehicles, electric vehicles on the ranks. That hasn't quite happened yet.
Okay, I'm standing a little bit confused because paragraph 1.2 indicating undertaken of a 28-day statutory consultation in respect of Hackney carriage, private hire vehicles and operators' licences.
Sorry, Chair, I thought I just explained.
Yes, you have. Would that, any comments or from the public or anybody else, will that necessitate to come back to this committee before?
Yes, it would.
Right, okay. So what I'm going to suggest to members is that we ask for it to come back to this committee, and to do so with the report on the financial figures and consequences of any potential changes to this particular issue.
Possibly 2 different things.
Yes.
If there was a response to the fees and charges and objections being received, then legally you have to bring it back to this committee bring it back for consideration. They have to be considered. If it's a separate report, I'll look for Lloyd on that, because that's a separate matter around the income that we've got at the moment, being able to subsidise licence fees.
I think what I'm hearing from members, and I've got 2 others who are indicating to speak, there is an element of concern being expressed about removing a free licence, which we've used to encourage participation in gaining a clean engine on the highways. I can understand the budgetary pressures and how much we've got left in the budget to actually achieve something special with this. but I'm also concerned about removing an opportunity to encourage their continued use as electric vehicles. Now,
Just some worth bearing in mind that if you permit the existing licence holders to continue to licence without any fee, then you will be limiting any newcomers onto the fleet. We will just remain with the 6.
yeah,
I think that's where we're at
unless
currently
there's a
with the
budgetary
fees.
change, as a
Yeah,
which we can't do.
And again, licensing is self-funding, so it's funded by its own fees. So if the fees aren't coming in, it's not going into the budget. It would have to be subsidised from somewhere else within the council, which is
Lloyd, can
always
you
difficult.
clarify? Yeah.
So I'll try and break this down into options, I suppose. Then, so if members wish to direct officers tonight to make an amendment to the report, we can do, and we can apply the remaining reserve to those vehicles that are already benefiting from the exemption. Secondly, if you wanted to open or continue that exemption to offer to further vehicles, you can make a suggestion or a recommendation onto Policy and Resources Committee as part of this report. That would create a potential revenue pressure. What I'd probably advise against is bringing something back to this committee. The next committee isn't until the 23rd of March, and we set our fees and charges in February. So I would suggest that either at the end of the consultation period, that's either delegated through to chair and vice chair, to pick up any comments that come through the consultation, or that goes directly onto Policy and Resources Committee for consideration.
Okay, I'll let members think about that, because I think there's 2 options effectively that you've got there. And I'll call on Councillor Cooper, then Councillor Steve.
Thank you very much, Chair. The air quality in this city is what inspired me to be a councillor, because I'm not happy living in an air quality management area. If I need to get a taxi, it's usually because it's an antisocial hour. I don't really want a diesel or a petrol taxi waking up my neighbours at funny hours. There's many benefits to having EVs, but what I can't help think is the problem, time and time again, is there's no option for EV taxi drivers to charge EVs in a designated taxi spot. We mentioned this at the last committee, and I was advocating when we were talking about Copenhagen Street. I don't want to go into it too much. And I was told by officers that wasn't giving choice to people. But I feel without having a dedicated EV taxi rank, we are not giving choice and we are not encouraging EV taxis. This is a great idea, not having taxi fees, but it's not working well enough, and it's not working well enough because we haven't put the infrastructure in. So I'd really like this committee to think about how we can encourage this in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to just underline a bit more about the this issue about having free licensing for EV taxis. We've declared a climate emergency. We've got we've said that we've got we want to have a clean air in the city, and we're trying to license for that. And I understand the budgetary pressures, but to go backwards on something that we've already been offering, I think we're a backward step, because somebody later on, he says, right, I'm going to take advantage of this free 1 or 2 years of free licensing. Think, oh, well, it's only for a year. In the scale of 10 years, it's meaningless, isn't it? So it's not consistent to only do it for 1 year. But what I'm wondering about is, we've said that it has to be self-funding, self-financing. So what I'm wondering about is, and this may not be popular with some people, but surely what we should be looking at is self-funding in the pool of taxi drivers. So there are hundreds of other taxi drivers and hundreds of other taxi licenses being done. Surely what's important is that the pool of that is self-funding. So if we had to make those fees another £10 or whatever more to pay for that, surely then it's still self-financing in terms of the pool of the funds that we're raising. So is there another way of doing it so that the taxi community are not being charged more per se, they're still being charged the same amount, it's just been spread around in a different way?
I'm just chatting to Lloyd, but I don't think, I'll ask officers to confirm, I don't think what you're suggesting is potentially legal, but Lloyd?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would use the word illegal or not, Chair. I think that it would certainly cause some dissatisfaction amongst those drivers who are petrol and diesel, which they are the bulk of. And I suppose at the moment, given the numbers that we're talking about, there wouldn't be a huge difference in financials, would there, from the number of electric vehicles we've got. But I think for me, the biggest risk is reputational from those drivers who would be, in effect, penalised.
Okay. Councillor Riaz, and then I've got a proposition for you.
Yeah, Chair, could I just ask a couple of questions? So this, the money that we subsidise this licence fee is taxi drivers that are paid into a fund which was supposed to be for an unmet demand survey, correct? So how did we get to the decision that we'd use that unmet survey money that the whole of the taxi drivers put into, and then we decided to put that money in towards the subsidising electric vehicles? So that's what I want to understand. And did that come with the agreement of the taxi drivers that supplemented it? Then the subsequent question then would be, actually, if we're thinking what's been mooted on the other side, is actually surely we should go back. If we're pooling from that source of funding that the taxi driver is already paying into for an unmet demand survey, right, in any other future for kind of funding, surely it's down to the drivers that fund it to decide where that money goes rather than us.
I think, and I'll stand corrected, I think the lack of a survey during the COVID period gave us a bit of a surplus. I think that's the consequence of where the money's come from. But you want to come back?
Yeah, so then we decided to spend that money as a committee on this. Did we offer it back to the drivers? Okay. Should we have done that?
Well, I don't want to revisit events which this committee decided several years ago.
Sure, for sure. So that's just something to bear in the back of mind. The question regarding this debate here, obviously we as a committee decided that this is the best way forward in terms of all the environmental impacts and the ambitions that we wanted to kind of achieve. I want to understand the take-up of this. Is it 6 in one go, or was it 2 per year, or one? Has it been gradually increasing? So I want to understand, has it been, is it, you know, it's just the initial impact and those drivers are benefiting, or that people have realised, hang on a second, Fred down the road has got one, actually, it's worth me getting one, and then kind of built up from that way. So it kind of helps us decide in which way we kind of go forward.
Yeah, it was certainly gradual. In the first year we had one, and then the following year we had 3. So certainly over the last 3 years it has been gradual to the point where we're now at 6.
Sure. Then
and when it comes to unmet demand service, the council is still going to have to meet those charges, even if the money has been met. At the present time, when we come to it next year, there will be a requirement to undertake that unmet demand, and then that will need to be back.
Sure, of course, but that money's for an unmet demand survey, not a subsidising electric vehicles. You understand? So that's the point I was trying to make. In terms of what Niall has kind of said, is well, actually it is working. You know, people are incentivised to do that. So it kind of begs the question: if we've got a surplus and we've got the money in the bank, so to speak, to kind of doing it, we should. From that money, then we should be continuing.
What I have going through my mind, and sometimes my mind can be a bit cloudy, but I'll try and articulate it as best as I can. I think what I'm hearing from the committee, the best solution to the problem which we have may be this, that we reinstate the ability for people to renew, which will take up the vast majority of the remaining budget, and we make an application to Policy and Resources for more resources to be made available for any other new driver who may wish to convert to an electric vehicle over the next 12 months. So we automatically renew, is what I'm suggesting to you as a proposal, for 6 who are already electric vehicles, and we ask Policy and Resources to allocate some resources to enable new drivers to convert to electric. That's my suggestion to you. Would that be as acceptable?
Chair, we as officers will do what committee instruct us to do as long as it's legal and safe. But what I would say is, members of this committee know the extent of the financial challenges we face over the next 2 years. And so I would remind members that this may only be a 5-10k budget request that gets passed on to another committee to consider. But if there were multiples of those across all committees over the next month or so, that puts the council under extreme pressure at a time when we're already needing to make significant savings.
I think that's accepted by all members around this table. Councillor Scott.
I've listened to this debate with great interest, and I think some really interesting points have been made. I'd point out a couple of extra things, and one, I think, is consistency with the national policy on a road tax, which is adding a tax to EV cars at a lesser level, but it's still adding it on. It's a recognition that the national fleet of private vehicles is going to be increasingly shifting from ICVs, internal combustion, to EVs. And that's, you can see that already in the private market, where a second-hand EV is about the same price now as an equivalent ICV, and a whole lot cheaper to run. I don't know enough about really how the taxis work. I thought about the idea of charging is important, because I think even a full 300-mile range might be well used up in a day, and there will be need to charge up. But we do have some charging stations in the city, and I'm thinking about Tallow Hill seems to be ones which are not particularly well used all the time, and there might be some opportunities to make those. I don't think it works in a taxi rank, because taxis need to hold their position and keep moving on. I think that would be a downside on that. But I think we do need to take seriously that there will be a transition, and we don't need to be subsidising it out of council resources too much. And I think Policy and Resources will listen very hard to what the officers say about the budget pressures. I wonder whether it's appropriate, because this is a really important issue for the taxi fleet and for licensing, and licensing is how we generate the controls on that we should have further reports. I wasn't around when the first report was done on EV taxis, so I don't know how far we got. I don't want to interrupt the process of setting the necessary increase in this year's fees and charges. So is there a scope for getting a report back? Just going ahead with this as proposed and coming back with a report in a really well-considered report about how we might take this in a more strategic, considered way.
Chair, our next committee is not until March, so the council sets its fees and charges in February.
That's why I was saying go ahead with setting the fees and charges.
Can I finish?
And the officer proposal.
Yeah. That would cause a pressure. So I wasn't quite clear on what Councillor Scott is proposing, so you may want to clarify that again. The only other thing I was going to say, Chair, was, and I sat and supported members on the working group for this, so Councillor Stevens sat on that group as well. My memory, and my memory is not great either, this was meant to incentivise the change. It was never meant to be a lifetime prize, and taxi drivers were getting an annual subsidy. So we've had 6 taxis who benefited from this, either for a period of 1, 2 or 3 years. And I'm not a taxi driver, and I don't know the challenges that they face, but you know, those that have benefited from it have done well. And for me, it was always about incentivising that change. So again, I'd urge members to think about what the original essence was of this exemption.
Okay, the proposition in front of us, there's only one proposition at the moment, which is in the recommendation on page 43, which would actually withdraw the ability for those current 6 to renew on a free licence. Can I see a show of hands in favour of that proposition?
What paragraph number is it? I haven't got the page numbers on my computer.
The recommendation is on page 43.
I haven't got page numbers.
It's the
49.
40.
Is it the...
Agenda item 9.
Yeah, okay, got it, yeah. 1.2, recommendation 1.2 on this one.
Yeah. The option before members is to accept that or any amendment. I have made a suggestion. There's been no support for that amendment.
Do you want to clarify that again? Just clarify that amendment again so everybody's clear on it.
That we continue unchanged, so they will be able to renew their fees as free and make a request to Policy and Resources for more resources to allow further taxis to convert.
So we've got the original recommendation within the report, which is to amend what we're currently doing now, and for 26-27, the exempted fee, the subsidy, would only apply to new drivers, new vehicles. The chair has put forward a suggestion, which is that we continue as is in this current year. So the 6 vehicles that are currently benefiting from the exemption, they would continue to benefit from that exemption during 26-27, and that would mean, given the budget we've got available, there is nothing else left to provide an incentive to any new drivers. The second part of the chair's suggestion is that a request for some additional revenue is put forward to support that additional number of drivers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think having heard what Lloyd and the officers have said in terms of that, it was always supposed to be about incentivising new drivers into that. And if we take this measure as stated by you, Chair, I think we're going to be precluding new entrants into the market.
No incentive.
An incentive, and that I think that sends out the wrong message in terms of that. So I'm inclined actually to go with the original recommendation in there, and actually the money remaining in there be offered to new people that want to enter the market into that. I think that's a better way to go. And we do need a strategic review of this, of going forward in terms of, because at the moment the money, as I said, is being allocated from a pot of money that wasn't supposed to be spent for this in the first place. So we need a strategic view for plan going forward from Policy and Resources and whoever else in terms of how to tackle this if you are really serious about implementing it citywide. So I'm inclined to go with the original recommendations, Chair.
Well, what I'm thinking is if P&R reject it, then we're back to where we are now.
No, you're worse than where you are now.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, we did discuss this at great length at our committee meeting, and the idea is to promote new electric vehicles coming to the market. We had 1, and we've now got 6, and that's a step forward. So I would like to see encouragement to more drivers to convert. They're already getting a benefit having gone to electric vehicles, and they've benefited from that. And we shouldn't completely denude our funds when we could be encouraging other drivers to come forward.
Thank you very much, Chair. If this fund is not taken up by new drivers, what would then happen to this fund? Could it be used for charging? Thank you.
No, Chair. It wouldn't be used for that purpose.
Okay. The proposition is in front of you. We accept the recommendation as stated on the agenda item. All those in favour? Six. And against? 2. Oh, you've changed. Okay. I can understand both arguments across the table, but the decision has been made. Move on to the next item on the agenda. And I've lost my place. Agenda item 10. Just for interest, review of city centre taxi rank provision. It's just a small item. Who's taking this? Niall.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members. Yes, you may recall that a report was brought to a previous meeting for those members who were present, giving information that officers had looked into and were reviewing the city centre taxi rank provisions. Further work at that meeting, we were directed to engage with the highways officers on 2 proposals that have been put forward to see the viability of them and whether we can then go forward and formally consult on them as new taxi ranks. Unfortunately, the report, as you can see, it hasn't been positive, certainly for the 2 locations that were suggested. The one was in Lowesmore and the other one was in Copenhagen Street for 2 temporary evening ranks. The County Council are unable to support them for the reasons put forward in the report, which leaves us in a bit of a stalemate. We can't really take those 2 positions forward on this occasion. What I will say is that we will consider other locations should they come up. Worcester City is fairly unique. The roads themselves are narrow in most of the areas, and I think there are taxi ranks in the locations that are suitable at the moment. But things change, locations change, so we can always look at this and keep it on the agenda for future items. And we certainly talk to the trade at the Taxi Forum to see if they have any suitable suggestions. So again, we will consider them that they put forward.
Thank you, Niall. I think it's fair to say a lot of work by yourself and others have gone into making the suggestion for these locations for taxi ranks. Extensive consultation has taken place with the trade and others to make sure that the sites which we suggested were suitable and acceptable. Not for the first time, the County Council is, in my humble opinion, wrong. They have got it simply wrong. Their decision appears to be, whatever the question, the answer is no, and we will use our influence and our policy and our decision making to say no to any single request. I have, and I know Councillor Riaz has, made a formal request to the Cabinet Member responsible at Highways to overturn this decision. We've made that as County Councillors in our own capacity. I believe that we can add weight and support to our request by writing as a committee to the Cabinet Member responsible, asking him to reconsider, pointing out the extensive consultation and work which we've done to achieve this far, and pointing out the importance of these areas, not only socially but economically, to the taxi trade and to the city. And I would hope that the Cabinet Member responsible for highways will listen to reasoned argument, because quite clearly some of his officers are not. I've got Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I want to talk about Copenhagen Street. I think it's appalling that the County Council has appeared to turn a blank look at any changes to Copenhagen Street, which I would remind members, and you will use it often because it's the back door of the cathedral of the Guildhall, that it's still got the parking restrictions which date back from the day when fire engines used to come screaming out of those double doors, which are now shops, and no parking, no waiting at any time is what the parking restrictions are. Our parking enforcement team, who enforce the traffic regulations orders, are required to serve a notice on anyone who stops at any time. I'm pleased to say that the businesses have changed there, and they do need to unload, and we seem to be slightly pragmatic. But as the road layout, as well as the traffic regulation orders, the parking controls, date back from the days of the fire station, that road is plenty wide enough, in my opinion, to have a considered look at how you might change the alignments and its use. And I particularly would welcome the notion that during the daytime it be used for disabled parking.
Well, that was the proposal which we suggested, but we can't talk about that because it is purely a licensing issue and talking about taxi ranks at this stage.
But I hear what you... In the evening, a taxi rank.
We're talking about an evening taxi rank. What the County Council would choose to do at other times of the day is up to them. With electric charging machines. Councillor Riaz, then Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I personally thank you and the committee for obviously undertaking this piece of work and all the officers. We know this has been a long time coming in terms of that, and it's been a huge issue for the trade and for the city. All users of the city, whether it's normal pedestrians, whether it's bike users, whether it's normal car owners going through the city centre in terms of that, and you see the huge amount of volume of taxis that are parked in and around Foregate Street, in and around the Cross. In terms of that, that's because simply nowhere else to go with the advent of Uber and other app dialing companies. That's conflated the issue up with, as we know, cross-border hiring and the hundreds of vehicles that come here. The city's taxi trade has taken a massive hit. So when, with the number of licenses that we've got and the unmet demand survey that we've got, we've known for a long time there has been a need for new rank space within the city at strategic locations. We know the police, the issues that they have in terms of moving people on, and the amount of congestions that we have, and the issues around safety. It seems a really short-sighted decision from county not to understand the issues that go on in our city centre, and how the strategic placement of taxi ranks can help with dispersal, can help with community safety, can help with the issues that the trade face. So I'm really bitterly disappointed that all these issues haven't been taken into consideration, and the huge amount of work our officers have done to understand the situation and to give something back to the trade to understand the issues that they're kind of having. So, I'm really disappointed in this, and we'll be fighting it as much as we can. And I urge you as chair, with the consensus of all the members around here, to put that case forward to counties to hopefully reverse the decision that they've made.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is not only disappointing to taxi drivers, but it's also disappointing to the nighttime economy. When I'm out as a woman, I want to know that there is somewhere nearby that I can get a taxi and I'm not having to walk further than I need. So I think it's really disappointing, and I think that it could have prevented crime and just made our city even safer. And so I think it is a blow to both taxi drivers and the nighttime economy, and I'm very disappointed.
Regarding Copenhagen Street, and I've said this before in our meetings prepping for this committee meeting, I actually am not terribly supportive of the Copenhagen Street for a fixed taxi rag. I do recognise that it's used a lot by a lot of drivers, possibly, not probably legally, but I think it should be allowed for loading and other reasons, which is, as Councillor Scott, you do need to look at the traffic regulations on that street. But I do have concerns about overranking and it possibly backing up onto Deansway. I've seen the taxi rank at the Cathedral Square overranking, and until the taxi drivers stop overranking on the existing ranks, I think it's going to be difficult to prove to county that it's going to operate safely. So I think they have justified concerns on that particular street, but we do need to find taxi drivers places. There is a taxi rank just up at Cathedral that they can use, and there is the High Street.
Could, of course, be argued that they're overranking because there isn't enough taxi ranks around the corner, and this would relieve that strain. But we won't necessarily go there. Are there any other comments? There being none, can I ask you to support the recommendation with the suggestion that we formally write to the Cabinet Member responsible for highways, asking him to reconsider this proposal? Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 11. We're nearly there, folks. Licensing Annual Report 2025. Niall, if you want to add any more comments to this?
No, Chair, the report is there. It's an annual report. It's been coming for a number of years now. The format's very similar to other years. It gives an overview of where you're currently at with your licences, any trends. It shows sort of increases, decreases over the years. Happy to answer any questions if you have any. I don't propose to talk any further because I'm mindful of time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can say that it's one of the best reports we've had. It's a model of clarity. It's fantastic. I'll go through it page by page. Any questions on page 59, which is the first page? Page 60? 61?
Yeah, sorry, on cumulative impact, just fully welcome the review of that, as the Chair mentioned in his discussion with the police at the first item. That's going to be taking place this coming year. Quickly, what are the sort of factors you'll be taking into account when you carry out that review?
It is very much based on antisocial behaviour and crime and disorder. So the police are key, and the statistics that they have in relation to those elements. So it's working with the police and their crime statistical officer to bring back any evidence to see, one, whether the cumulative impact policy, first of all, should remain. If the evidence proves that it should, then in what form it should take, what streets, what area, and whether it should be revised. I know that at the last review it was revised and it was taken away from all licensed premises, and it focusing on wet-led premises and vertical drinking establishments and late-night refreshments, those that tended to generate the main issues in the town. So those are the factors that will be brought back for consideration.
I'd particularly meant in terms of how will it be reviewed. I would like to have an input, and I know the trade. I certainly know the city centre trade would be, but I'd like to have an input in that as ward councillor before it gets to the point of finalising a committee report, if you don't mind.
The consultation on it. There will be a consultation on the community impact policy.
Anything else on page 61? Yes, Councillor.
Yes, on the 3.14, there's a table of the number of Hackney carriage vehicles licensed. It's given at 24, 25 is 237, and if I read the fees and charges table correctly, there's a cap of 231. So we're 6 in excess. We're granting 6 more licenses than what we should be. And if there is an excess and there's something in the budget, does that mean we've got 6 more fees coming in than what we've budgeted for, and therefore there's an excess income?
There is a very good explanation to this, and I think...
There is. Certainly when the unmet demand survey was undertaken, they came to a figure that the council would be comfortable at, which was 231. We are still licensing that number of vehicles, and therefore the work is taking place to license them and monitor them and enforce. So there isn't any surplus as such. The numbers have come down, and you can see that they are coming down, and that was the intention of the unmet demand survey. Once we reach the figure of 231, we will then need to consider whether it's appropriate to continue to issue licences. The whole point was there were too many licences being issued, which was adding to the issues that you're talking about in the streets. But certainly when it comes to the fees and charges, it's all relative, isn't it? It's the actual number of vehicles that you license and the work that you undertake and the fees that are coming in to actually undertake that work. So there isn't an excess as such when it comes to fees and charges.
A popular misconception in Worcester is there are too many taxes in this city. I think there were too many taxes, and the freeze on new plates has consequently reduced the number of taxes in the city. We haven't yet reached that figure which was set for us, and we'll hopefully, when we do it, there'll be some decision making to make about where we go for the future. But it's not that we're issuing more licenses than we should do, it's that we're still trying to meet the unmet demand figure by pushing it down, if that makes sense. Page 61 again, 62, Councillor Holmes.
Scrap metal dealers. I'm quite pleased to see scrap metal dealers here. That we've got a fly tipping issue, but also some of this scrap metal it varies. It's under the Environment Agency, and there is no clear way for members of the public to find out where they can get licensed scrap metal deal. I have looked on our own website and I've looked on WRS. There isn't an easy link to find out how to get hold of you. So everybody goes to Facebook, and anyone who comes around and heckles that they collect will pick up these items. So how do we know that they're being responsibly recycled?
Scrap metal collectors do need to be licensed in any form. So anybody who's coming to your streets offering to collect your scrap metal, you can ask for their licence number, and then you can check that licence number. Bizarrely, it's on the Environment Agency's website. So when the legislation was put in place back in 2013, one of the requirements is that the register of scrap metal dealers, collectors, site licenses will be maintained by the Environment Agency. So what we will do, and it's something that we've had a discussion about, is amend the council's website so there's a clear link to the Environment Agency's website so that people can go and check their registered scrap metal dealers.
Page 63. Councillor Scott.
Paragraph 3.27, pavement licensing, is that appropriate page? Okay. I welcome the early review of this, and I think let's get it done before the spring starts and the pavement cafe starts springing up. There's one or two which I really think we need to look really hard at. So I'll be really looking forward to that. It's been a busy process looking at the applications which come in over the last year. And my question at this point is, I'd never know whether or not the comments made by me and others on applications have been approved or not. Could we have some feedback on the outcome of consultation? And that's all I'm asking for at this
Councillor,
stage.
you're correct, they're not. We can certainly do that. Certainly, if you've taken the time to put in comments and put in objections, then yes, you should be getting a reply, whether it's been granted or not, and whether your considerations have been taken into consideration. Too many considerations then, but you know what I mean.
Yes, my comments have been relating to fine details on there, like the hours of operation, the detail and design of the barriers and of the chairs, and indeed the location. And there's some really fine-grained stuff here, but I think it's very important for how the city centre feels, how they operate.
I know this is a very important issue for you and others. There will be a report going back to the March Committee on this very issue, so we're looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you very much.
Page 64, 65, 66. That concludes the meeting. It is 9:20. I wish you a safe journey home and a very merry and happy Christmas and a wonderful New Year. See you soon.